Welcome back to part 4 of the roller organ. Today we'll be working on push rods and the felt pads for the valves. Boy, you know, today we're going to make some parts out of some raw firewood, some pecan I believe, hardwood. Yeah, those push rods are going to need replaced and I'm going to make them. Also, these valve pads, they are well over 100 years old. We made these new relief valves from scratch last episode. Go back and watch part 3 if you want to see that. Today, we're going to be working on these valves up here at the reeds. The name of the game right now for me is determining where any air leakage or failure in the vacuum system is occurring. I want to make sure that these bellows are in good condition. I'm pretty sure they are, but we're going to take a better inspection of them right now and make sure that they are flexible and working properly. You know, these are almost 125 years old, and I'm shocked that they are really in great condition. There's a little bit of damage in the past here, it seems like, just because that corner folds, but it looks like someone rubber cemented it or something, and it holds air. I'm not going to mess with it if I don't have to. I'd rather leave the original. Speaking of original, there's the original manufacturing date penciled on the bottom, May 8th, 1901. Now I was about to rig these up upside down, but then I decided to put it back in the case because I have a hunch that one of these relief valves I made isn't functioning. And as you can see, that back one is struggling to get shut. I'm going to go ahead and address that, but for the moment being, we're going to tape it shut because I'm focusing on other issues. Now that wobbly tremolo noise is because I do have that one dump valve taped shut. That means there's a lack of evenness in the vacuuming and the transfer of pressure. So that will be obviously fixed, and you'll see that later in the video, but that's why you're hearing that. So you can hear we're starting to get it to play music, regardless of the fact that it still needs quite a bit of repair. What we're going to do is I'm going to cut up a jig. And I'm going to mount this thing basically upside down. So I'm going to create these little legs that allow me to fasten it down temporarily in an upside down position and still crank it so I can look at the bottom and watch the operation of the bellows. This wood is so remarkably dry and old and soft, I'm not going to risk hurting it by putting a fastener directly on it. So I'm going to lightly connect it with these fender washers just to distribute the pressure. Why does she want to do that? Now, because I'm not taking off this fabric, I can't see what's causing it to spring back. I don't know if it's a spring made of metal or made of wood. I'm not sure. But something causes it to spring back and fight the vacuuming action. Regardless, the fabric's performing well. It may need a little more of a bit of a patch on the side there where you can see the cracking, but for the most part, that fabric is functioning fantastically for being about 125 years old, and I don't want to mess with it. You better believe it's a strange feeling to hear my wife tell me that's so cool, because you know how many things you can get working on, and really it's not that interesting to anybody but yourself. In fact, I've put so many hours into this thing, it's hardly interesting to me sometimes. I really have to pace myself on this project, and I have gotten to a point with it a few times where I'm pretty frustrated with it, and that's kind of part of the fun. I could look up how to do this and watch a bunch of people do it, but half of the joy in projects like this is figuring it out on your own, even if it takes you years to do it a little at a time. Now, one of the problems is these valves, the felt on them is so hard. But I'm noticing 2 or 3 of them have this leather on them, and I realized that's what was supposed to be there. That bright red felt, that's not original. Somebody else put it on there, and it's very hard, and it bangs against the wood, which is what all that loud clicking noise is. Plus, it's not making a good seal, and I'm losing tons of air. So I'm going to tape up most of the holes and only punch free the holes of the 3 or 4 pads that still have leather on them. It's not going to sound like almost anything, but maybe we'll get just a few strong occasional notes, proving that we have good air draw when the felts are secure. And as I'm cranking, suddenly I start thinking, why is this wired? With how amazingly fabricated this entire mechanism is, who on earth would decide that's the way to finish it off with this weird piece of wire? And it strikes me, suddenly, that I've been looking at this thing for years. I've seen it ever since my childhood, even though it's spent most of its life in a box. And I realize this was a makeshift repair. I then looked to this back push rod and I realized I think that's a makeshift repair too. That little loop does not need to be there. This is a broken push rod that was supposed to clamp over the crankshaft. I've now determined that both the front and the rear push rod were broken. And I can speculate as to why that is, whether it be a missing screw holding them together and weird pressure cranking broke them, or cranking it too hard or too fast, or just general abuse of it, or general age. These broke and people made makeshift repairs and carried on. Here's a better look at that back one, and the little loop that was screwed into the top. Kind of a smart repair. Now what I want to determine is, because both these push rods are damaged, is it causing the bellows to stroke at different depths, which would mean one side might not be getting optimal air draw. And I've determined one side is shorter. As you can see, the right side in the video, or the user front side on the machine, strokes just a little deeper, which means the back bellow is not drawing as efficiently. And so I've been sidelined from the valve project. The first thing I need to do is build new push rods. Now, this is probably the most fun I've had. First of all, I get to stress test that bellow. You can see it vacuuming down. It's working great. And that material really holding up well. I finally get to unfold those ends and see what they look like. Now I realize I really do need to manufacture some new push rods. There's just no reason not to. And I've kind of been begging to do a little carpentry project on this. Now you can see it spreads apart, and my hunch is that these kind of clipped onto the crankshaft like a clothespin. And as you can see, here's this little screw that would have pulled them together to clamp it on and allow it to not slip out. Well, I only have one as reference, and heaven only knows where I'm going to find a bunch of 125-year-old panhead, flathead screws for replacements that are missing all over this project. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, there's what we're working with, and you can see this is a broken piece. You can see where the round hole was to receive that crankshaft, and you can see how it would have spread to be able to slip up on, and of course this screw would have put in to hold it together and make sure it didn't slip off. So I believe we are going to have to find some hardwood, and I don't have access to any hardwood anywhere around here. Actually, now that I think about it, I do have a whole pile of hardwood here, and it's on the wood pile. Now I've got some pecan, I've got some maple, and I've got some oak. And I found this little chunk. I was looking for a relatively flat section in one of these that I could get started on the table saw. So I'm going to mark out the flattest section of this, and we're going to just try to turn it into what we need to turn it into here, because by golly, there's no sense in going and buying a $20 piece of small project wood lumber if I can just make it for free at home. I'm going to mark out the flattest section I can find and the best section for what I need, and I'm going to start trying to fabricate it with the tools I have on hand. Well, you know, someday I'll get some electrical down at this shop and it'll be a lot quieter to run these tools. But for now, that generator's doing a great job, and this little table saw is going to get some more work. I'm practicing how to push this piece of wood through, making sure it's not going to get all weird on the fence or when I push it through. But honestly, I don't trust it. So I'm going to screw this long piece of pallet wood to it, because I don't even want to mess with a pushing stick. I want to be able to push it from about 2 feet away. And that looks like it's going to work out pretty good. So with that, I need to try to push it through a few times and get myself a nice 90-degree angle so I can actually have some flat surfaces and start cutting the dimensions of the pieces I need to make these push rods. So let's get cutting. Well, this is going pretty good. Nice corner there. It isn't perfect, but it is perfect enough to get going on finally slicing out these rods. I'm pretty excited. Now I'm going to mark them out, start transferring dimensions, and I think I'm going to cut 4 of these because I guarantee that I'm going to mess one up and I'll probably break one. So it'll be good to have 2 extras around. I'm going to make this cut flat on the opposite side so that I can push it through the saw without my push rods getting stuck between the blade and the fence, because I just don't want to risk any damage with them chattering around in there when they finally get cut off. I'd rather them fall free like this. Well, I made a church pew for dolls or something like that. I don't know. That'll go in the scrap pile. Maybe I'll use it for something later. Maybe I'll need to make another push rod before I'm done with this. Anyway, look at everything we cut off of that log just to make 4 tiny little sticks. But they are the sticks we're looking for. So, let's turn them into push rods. I'm pretty proud that we've come this far out of a log. And I'm going to make sure that these are a suitable size, but I want that slit in the middle to be not too large. So I didn't want to run it through the table line and take out that huge 1/8 inch of the saw. I figured this Japanese saw would be a much better idea to make a much finer cut, which means there's less meat missing up at the hole that's going to connect and grip around the crankshaft. Well, you can see the difference between what we've made and what we're working with. Now I think we're going to have to take the organ back out of the case again, as it's been in and out a billion times now. I'm at the point now where I need to get to these top valves and start working on the felts, which means I need to remove both of these crankshaft bearings, I guess is what you'd call them. That's what they call them in the industry, I suppose, if this is an industry still. And we're going to pull that valve assembly and the entire mechanism off of the top of this organ. You really can't rush this. Like I said, every time I touch it, I find something else that needs more attention. And before the end of this video is over, I guarantee I'm going to find more. You know, it's like when you work on an old car. You think you just have one thing to work on, and as soon as you fix that one thing, you find out when that's running good, something else now is showing its weakness and it needs repaired. It just all kind of becomes a domino effect, and you can't really get mad at it because, honestly, if it needed attention, you're already working on it. So I'm not upset. I'm just shocked at how much work this thing needs. I really did not expect it to need this much work because I've seen people use it over the years, and although it never worked well, I didn't realize how far gone this machine really was. For instance, this screw on the left spins and spins. It seems to be making contact with nothing, which worries me because number one, this assembly isn't fastened down properly, and number two, perhaps the reeds inside aren't fastened properly to the back of this wooden plate. I don't really know. I don't know if it's supposed to be a wood screw. I don't know if it's supposed to be a mechanical bolt until I take it out. But I can tell you, I just recently heard something shake loose and start rattling inside the machine as I was working on this. And it inclined me to believe that some sort of a bolt had fallen loose because I couldn't figure out what else it could be. But I haven't seen the sign of a single bolt on this machine yet. But here I am, spinning this theoretical screw on the left and wondering, why is that not fastening to anything? Well, there it is, out of the organ. I never expected to be this far. I never thought I'd be taking this part off. And look at this. One side is a wood screw and one side is a machine screw or a bolt, so go figure. Now I really think there's probably a bolt inside, but I can't worry about it right now. I gotta worry about these valves. And so I thought maybe I could make these felt and leather pads, but boy, then I'd have to make a little punching die to cut them out. And it's quite a pain in the butt. I mean, look at all these things. And look how worn the ones that are actually original are. And look at how hard the ones somebody tried to replace are. They're wrong. It's too hard. It doesn't seal the valve right, and it slaps. It's loud. It's all incorrect. As you can see, there's only 5 left. In fact, there's some that have nothing on them and it's just the raw metal. So I did a little research here. Of course I pulled all of these off and scraped them clean. But I figured I know there's other people that have restored this, and I know there's a guy named Harold with a company called Roller Organ Restoration that I've seen on YouTube. Although I haven't watched a multitude of these videos, and I don't think a lot of these videos show the process of repairing any of these things or making these parts, I do know that that guy is probably a wealth of knowledge and has a ton of experience. And I did go to his website to see what he knew about acquiring parts or making parts. And in fact, he had many parts from these old machines. And he even remanufactures these pads. And so, I did not want to order any parts. I want to make the parts. But the one part I did not want to make is these leather and felt pads. And so, while I'm waiting on those in the mail, I take a peek at this mechanism, and I realize there's stuff wrong with this. Boy, there's a lot wrong with this, and it breaks my heart. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on the part I decided to work on. And I'm going to get out this great old 3M combination sanding and scouring wheel. And boy, I love this thing. It's old and worn out, but that's kind of what I want because it's not too aggressive for these little guys. And I'm going to be able to scrub all that excess glue off and polish these heads. So, as you can see, it's really made them beautiful, and that's going to be nice to look at. And of course, it scrubbed a majority of the glue and the last of the residue off of the other side where the felt pads were, which means it should be almost ready to apply the new felt pads and leather when I acquire them. And lucky me, right on time, Harold got that out in the mail lightning fast. Thank you, Harold. And he even sent instructions telling you how to apply the glue. In fact, he told you that it needs to be contact cement. And look at these beautiful new pads. So I found some contact cement. Believe it or not, that tiny little bottle's $9, so I hope it's the right one. But I trust Harold. He's obviously got the experience. So I'm going to get some gloves on, and I'm going to do what he said. I'm going to get out some toothpicks or some matchsticks, and I'm going to apply that stuff. But not before I get the last of the residue off of those metal plates with a little bit of acetone. And of course, these cheap gloves fell apart right away. Better put on some good gloves. You know they're the good gloves when they make that stretchy glove sound, so that's a note to all you kids out there looking to get into your first box of rubber project gloves. If it doesn't make that cartoon squeaky noise, well, I mean, why are you buying them? Anyway, here we go. You can watch this. I've tried to time-lapse it and make it pretty quick, but it is not a complicated process. It's just about applying a proper layer of glue there, applying the pad and making sure it's straight, and then pressing the pad down evenly for a full minute per pad. So this took a little while, and that's why I'm not making you watch it in real time. In fact, I'm going to let you watch the second half in a much quicker time lapse. Fantastic. Look at how good that looks. I'm so excited because this is another place where we were losing an enormous amount of air due to things not being sealed up properly. And now, I've reinstalled this mechanism on the top, sort of. I'm still leery of that mechanical screw, and so I've shimmed that hole and put a wood screw into it temporarily. And as I click in that very first push rod, I encounter a world of problems and realize this video is super far from being done. If you're enjoying this content, please like, please comment, and please subscribe. I do read every comment, and I absolutely enjoy the conversation I've been having with all of you. In the meantime, we're going to put this thing on hold, and I'll see you on part 5. But thanks for watching, and God bless. And feel free to go back and watch part 3 if you want.